Hello, friends, and welcome to Worldbuild with us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty, and I'm here with my co-hosts Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. On today's episode, folks, oh yes, it is time. It's the spooky season. It's getting down there in the temperatures, and that's right. It's time for our annual Monster Mash and Halloween Jam. On this episode, I've actually got an updated horror jam list with some fun little bangers in there for the new spooky season. Decided to update the list to reflect, the more common and popular movements in horror as of the last decade or so. And as a result, we've got some new monsters on here. But before we get into that, I always remind everyone that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow some instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we'll be building your world. Unless it's like a special holiday episode, but yeah, that's fine too. Also, by the way, if you want to be part of our Patreon and give us money, we've got a Patreon over there. Go ahead if you want to say thank you for the podcast, or if you just want to continue and support, do all that cool stuff. Anyway, we've got an episode, we've got a jam, and I'm very excited. So our new monster list this time is, what's the monster, you might ask? Well, we've got 10 different options to choose from. We've got 1, you are in fact the monster. 2, we've got society. 3, ghouls, just straight up ghouls. 4, we've got a cult. Number 5, we've got some kind of building. Number 6, some kind of object. Number 7, a creature from beyond the stars. Number 8, an ancient evil. Number 9, the fucking devil. And number 10, some kind of mental or intergenerational trauma made manifest. So, Courtney and Daniel, any particular ones that you're excited to grab? Any that you hope we roll on those ones?
I mean, I'm always down for like occult, religious, and intergenerational trauma. That's fun stuff.
Oh, Daniel,
Myself.
what about you?
Myself, because I'm a monster.
I mean, fair enough. Yeah. Anyone who knows Daniel knows that, oh boy, you should see the way he treats wait staff. No, I'm joking. Of course. Daniel is a perfect gentleman. But anyway, the monster for this year's Spooky Jam, Monster Mash, is going to be a creature from beyond the stars. All right. Well, that's always an interesting one because I'm thinking that we could have, the void situation. I left the wording intentionally kind of vague there because you could have something like, I don't know, alien, or you could have something that is perhaps a little less or a little bit goofier, like a Roger Corman film like Space Invader or something like that. Or anyway, so the monster we've got is going to be a creature from beyond the stars, and the subgenre that we're going to be focusing on this time is, well, howdy, we've got a slasher for our first subgenre. So Daniel, I'm going to kick it over to you because I feel like you're the perfect person who will throw a wrench into this seemingly basic and straightforward premise. I mean, when you think about it, that's basically just Alien, right? You got an alien stalking around some kind of a spaceship, murdering people. It's obviously elevated, but what do you have in mind? We've got a slasher, we've got a creature from beyond the stars. What are we thinking? What are we starting with?
I would like to have something like E.T. but murderous.
Okay, so something a little bit more terrestrial then, right? So something that happens on the ground base, or on Earth is what I mean, not just on the ground. Jesus Christ.
Specifically, I'm thinking about a friendly little alien that's actually a slash murderer.
Okay. So I've actually never seen E.T.
Really?
Really? Somehow.
Interesting.
Like, imagine if he had the buzzsaw in his hands rather than someone got cut by it and he heals people.
Yeah. So honestly, E.T. I have not seen probably since I was a child.
Oh, okay.
Since I was no. I've seen it, Daniel. I loved Reese's Pieces for a big reason because of E.T. But no, not for quite some time. But I mean,
The
do you
premise
really?
for ET,
Yeah, I mean,
can we
go ahead.
try and piece this together? I don't remember. I think the alien is lost and the government's trying to get him, and so this kid finds him and they're buddies, and he's trying to get him to be able to contact his alien buddies to pick him up.
Daniel, that is a remarkably succinct
Is that basically
summation.
it?
Yeah, that's basically it. It's like, hey, there's an alien that gets left on Earth and
Mhm.
befriends a small child, and then
Yeah.
they form a parasitic bond, and like he has the ability to heal. You're gonna tell me that it's not parasitic? Come on.
And the alien can heal people with his finger.
Yes.
And like other psychic powers, like I think telekinesis and things. It's surprisingly in the movie, didn't they like Photoshop out the guns to be like cell phones or something?
In the newer versions, they take
Yeah.
out the guns and replace them with walkie-talkies.
Yeah,
Yes.
Oh my
walkie-talkies.
God.
It is,
But
yes,
see,
it is
wow.
I'm
walkie-talkie.
thinking though, like, what if ET was actually a serial killer, and I don't know why, but he's murdering children? That's my
Okay.
contribution.
Yeah.
So it's basically Psycho Gorman is what we're going with. Do you want to keep it to children, or do you want it to be like what kind of a premise are we going with? Is it Critters maybe? Where like the aliens come down and they just start eating everyone? What are we thinking here?
I just want to murder children. So
Yeah, I feel you.
like I think in it, right? Are a bunch of children murdered by the clown alien? So let's go with that.
Okay, we can definitely start with child murder. That's totally fine, Daniel.
Maybe maybe I'm not sure if this ET creature would have been like dropped off on the planet as like an exile because it's like so fucked up to the other aliens, or if it's like put on here to scout it out and collect maybe genetic samples from these kids and stuff like that, and that's why it's consuming them or killing them or doing something to their bodies. But also when you brought up the healing part of it, like thinking, what if when it heals people who are injured, it like imparts part of its DNA in them.
Ew.
So you get some like body horror going on too.
Gross. I like the idea of it being abandoned because it's too murderous.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Courtney, you just triggered something in me that I'm like, yeah, okay. What if we've got this serial killer and I'm thinking about like, Daniel, we're going to get to children, right? We're going to murder those children. What if we do something that's a little bit interesting and we make it more akin to like it triggers some kind of hyper aggressive puberty in these kids? Or like because you're talking about body horror and we're talking about kids, right? Like puberty is body horror. And like what happens if this alien is like triggering something that makes it go beyond just regular puberty? It's an alien like synthesis version of like puberty on top of that to make it even worse. Because then what you can do, right, is you can make it so the kids are like ashamed or like is this normal? Like having something happen to them while it's happening. It's like obviously not fucking normal, but they don't know any better, play that up a little bit.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked up.
Okay, Daniel, you started with child murder and I only had to go from there. So
this also, of course, talking about aliens and DNA stuff reminds me of Octavia Butler and like the Xenogenesis trilogy about the aliens who come to Earth and like quote unquote save humanity, like kinda, sorta, but also by splicing DNA together and
turning us into pets.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
and then having sex with us. Gross.
Totally consensual and fine. But thinking about like
consent, and we all know it. Anyway, yeah, go on.
Thinking about like that aspect of it where like maybe this thing recognizes that it's been exiled from its race or its civilization, so it's like trying to spread its influence here, maybe to get revenge in the far future or something.
Okay, wait, I just realized that Species already kind of does something like the puberty horror thing that I was talking about previously.
I haven't seen that one either, actually.
Daniel, have you seen the movie Species?
A really long time ago.
We got to put that on a movie night at some point, because I think Species is actually a really fun slasher alien horror movie. And it's got a scene with H.R. Giger's work in it for literally no reason. It's just like a nightmare dick train. And it's just like, bam, there we go. H.R. Giger involved.
That seems like reason enough to include it, really.
I mean, I don't disagree. But can you say more about what you were talking about, Courtney? Like, when you say far-flung future, are you literally talking about the future? Like, say more about that.
I mean, like, okay, let's say you've got this psychopathic alien who's like too fucked up for his own civilization or whatever he's grouped in with, and so they dump him off on Earth as an exile. But this thing is so bent on like perpetuating its own existence and perhaps eventually seeking revenge on the people or the aliens who exiled it, that it like starts to splice itself with these kids. And that's what it's doing with the whole puberty thing. Like, it's basically trying to make more of it in a really fucked up way.
What if you just take your idea, and the reason why it's dropped off is because it's going through puberty, and that's how that species deals with them. So it's going through puberty, and there's like sex related stuff that it does, hence the thing, and it wants to go back and get revenge on its quote unquote parents, because that's just natural cycle for them.
Yeah, I like that.
I really love that, because like it implies that there's a cycle of like teenagers who are like, I'm going to take over this whole planet and make sure that they have star travel just to come back and fuck with you, mom. You know,
like maybe like gestates itself into the life forms there, and then they can make pods that can then push itself back into space or something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I do love the idea that it's like hurling later generations of human into space. Like, you're basically creating superhumans that are going to like guaranteed to be astronauts, right? It's like, of course, our best and brightest will be sent off into space, only to be received by the mothership later on, you know, once it's calmed down and has like matured just a little bit.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, it's fucked up, but I honestly, it's kind of a cool and interesting like life cycle to consider in that way. That's really fun, I think. And it's a lot more interesting than just like, hey, I'm a sexy lady, I'm gonna murder you for your DNA. You know, like, I'm sure that there's probably and potentially a little bit of that, but like this part is at least way more interesting because you have like colonizing involved with your puberty.
Have you guys seen, I think it's Under the Skin?
No.
Yeah, Under the Skin. It's Scarlett Johansson. Who
is that the one with Antonio Banderas?
No, that's The Skin I Live In, I think.
Okay.
Very different,
no,
very different movies.
I think I've heard of it. I don't think I've seen it.
It's like a weird basically she's an alien collecting unsuspecting men, pretty much, as an attractive female human figure.
Okay, we're gonna do a double feature with Species and then that right after, just so we can compare notes and be like, which do you enjoy more? So yeah, we're gonna have to have that for a double feature movie night at some point, for sure.
Pretty messed up.
Yeah. I like how Daniel's the one who started with child murder, and he's like, Dan, you guys are messed up for bringing up that child murder thing.
Yeah, I don't want the sex part. That's why. I don't mind murdering the children.
Oh God. Okay. Well, to be fair, at least the children aren't having sex, Daniel. I mean, that was in the Stephen King It version, but you know.
So far.
Yeah. Oh my God.
We did say they're going through puberty, so that means that they're like at least teenagers.
We're at least thinking about it.
And all that's teenagers do is want to have sex. So
yeah, but maybe like the alien form of sex is not what we think of as sex.
Devouring and eviscerating.
Yeah.
The kids don't know that though.
Laying eggs in them or something.
Yep.
Like, because remember, we do have to bring it into like the slasher realm. And like so far we've got body horror.
It picks people off slowly.
Maybe it's like using people as like incubators for egg sacs or something.
I mean, maybe we need to borrow some of the ET stuff because ET is this little friendly, little tiny creature that's a friend to the kid. I could see maybe it's not the alien murdering people, but it causes the kids to go psychotic because of the
Yeah.
hypersensitivity stuff.
Oh
So
yeah,
Hormonal rage. It's hormonal
Yeah.
rage. Yeah, there we go.
Mhm. And I'm sure maybe it maybe after they end up stabbing someone to death, then it goes over and plants its eggs and stuff in the body or whatever. But I can
Mhm.
imagine the kids being the murderers as a result of its psychical presence.
See,
That's fun.
that I can get behind for sure, Daniel. That's
Yeah.
a great way to do it, where it's like I can't help the way that and maybe it's one of those things where the kids don't even realize what's happening until like the big brother starts just like hacking at people with a fucking hatchet or something like that, you know?
I could also
Um,
see it being like this thing wants the older generations to die off so that it has more like fresh DNA to work with
mm.
in a way. Like it doesn't really have a use for the older generations, and it knows it's those people are just going to get in the way. So it basically wants the kids to slaughter all of the adults.
So now we're getting into a little bit more like Children of the Corn type situation, I think, as well, which I think has some potential. But I do love the idea of like keeping it kind of small and confined to like a party where, you know,
Yeah.
like that we start seeing that hormonal rage start to kick in and like bodies start to stack up.
Hmm.
Hmm. Well, I think that, oh God, excuse me. I think that that's a great place to put a pin in it for now, and then we can come back to it because we've still got more monster mashes to go. So I think that for this time, what might be fun is we've already got a creature from beyond the stars. What would happen if we combined that with another monster for our next scenario? How does that sound to you guys? Do you want to play around and add something else to a creature from beyond the stars?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Mhm.
All right. So the monster joining us in this kind of werewolf meets Frankenstein or Dracula meets Frankenstein. One of the crossover events from the Universal, we've got an edition of you, the monster, plus a creature from beyond the stars. Oh boy. Well, okay. I feel like that might actually require a reroll because I feel like puberty is the true monster. And as someone who's gone through puberty, maybe we've already done that. Or do we want to roll for a subgenre and see what we get that's a little bit different this time?
I'd say roll for a subgenre.
Mhm.
All right, let's go. Our subgenre this time is we've got psychedelic horror. Courtney, why don't you kick us off first here? What are you thinking? We've got psychedelic horror. You are joining us as the monster. You being a broad sense, not you, Courtney. You
Mhm.
obviously. You is joining us as well as the creature from beyond the stars. What are we thinking? Where are we going to start with this?
I'm thinking like almost the opposite end of the life cycle here. Like do something with uh like Cthulhu-esque possession of somebody with like Alzheimer's or dementia. Like their reality is slipping, but it's not just in the normal way that you think of. It's like something is literally creeping in from an alternate plane into their brain.
I find that to be tremendously horrifying.
Yes.
The idea that like your brain is like you are like you are literally, you know, like going through the later stages of Alzheimer's and you cannot confirm reality because you can't really confirm a lot of things, and then you add in a cosmic element like a creature from beyond the stars. Holy shit, that is so unbelievably horrifying. And honestly, I feel like it makes for a where it sets up a kind of tragic hero in the end, so to speak, or maybe not. Maybe we have a lagoon situation. Lagoon? Cocoon, sorry.
Mm.
Cocoon situation. Yeah. Yeah, the Wilford Brimley movie,
Ye-
not whatever lagoon was. I think that's the French version of gooning, but anyway, I'll stop there. So what do we think about that? How are we going to move forward?
I guess another way to approach it would be like an older person who starts to get all of these signs and goes to a doctor and is like diagnosed with some sort of Alzheimer's or something, but in reality it's like different than that, and they can't really convey that without being assumed that they're like hallucinating or what have you.
Is this still in the context of our adolescent ET alien killer?
I think we're a different
No,
story.
this is a different
Oh,
scenario.
completely
Yeah.
different scenario? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wait,
Yeah.
I'm
We're
confused. Is it still the alien?
Still a creature from beyond the stars is like the
Okay.
broad
But
thing.
psychedelic stuff.
Yeah, with like
Yeah.
you as the villain, which would be like this central human figure.
I see. Sorry, I've been lost. I'm on psychedelics.
we know. We know.
Good. All good. So I really do appreciate that. And I feel like there's a lot of interesting stuff that you could kind of mix in there where it's like maybe this person is trying to hide their diagnosis because of
Mhm.
either a job related thing or a family related
Yeah.
thing. And like there's some kind of pressure where it's like, I just need to hide this aspect for X amount of days or X amount of weeks or what have you. And so they're trying to like literally hold back this massive change within them that is caused from some kind of like alien or creature from beyond the stars. And they're
Mhm.
just like, I can't contain this. And like they're, like they're really trying their best. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot that you can do there with that type of scenario, as brutal as it might be.
You could, in the absence of, because a disease like Alzheimer's destroys your memories essentially. So I wonder if perhaps the creature's transmission is like overriding memories to make itself whole. So
Yeah.
like as a disease, it starts to replace what you know. So eventually you lose your identity because you become this other set of knowledge, which is the alien.
Yeah, I like that.
Ooh, is it preparing like the takeover of your body? Is that, are we getting like pod people, but like the slow, deliberate, like what is the experience of like losing yourself to a pod person? Like, what does that process actually look like?
Right, like so it's replacing pieces of your whatever engrams make up your map of memories, and so over time, it seems like it's deteriorating your memories like you would in Alzheimer's, but really it's replacing them with other memories you don't understand until
Yeah.
you become the other thing.
Right, but what I'm asking is that alien taking over your body then? Is it a body snatcher situation?
I think so, because in your
Yeah.
body, your memories, your consciousness would become that of the creature.
Okay, I love the concept of doing that. Like, I love the individual, like, because in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, right? Like, you always see the horror from like the mass perspective, from like people pointing and like, oh, look, they've been replaced, right? But the idea that you're with an individual for that process to watch them decay and degrade as this alien takes over their body is genuinely horrifying. Holy shit.
Yeah. And like, yeah, I think visually it could be really interesting if you have this as like a movie or a TV show or even a comic where you start and like there will be like kind of weird things around the edges or like images will be warped a bit, and it's stuff that like the main character can ignore or brush aside for a while, and act like it's not as bad as it is, but then they end up like full on like horror from another plane kind of hallucinations and like very distorted thinking and stuff. And this is probably because I just watched a Videodrome last night, but definitely on like the
Ooh,
thinking
all
about
hail the new
hallucinations.
flesh, baby. Yeah,
Mhm,
absolutely.
mhm.
I really love that idea, Courtney, and I love the concept that you're rolling with there. One thing I'm thinking about as well, because we're thinking of like, and by the way, I think comic is spot on for something like this, by the way, like
Mhm.
100%. But what I'm thinking of too is that like maybe what they're trying to do is like combat, because again, psychedelic, right? Like that's where my brain is starting to go. Like I'm also thinking about like how like stuff like ketamine or psilocybin is starting to be used for people to handle mental trauma or like
Mhm.
depression and stuff like that. And maybe there's like a sequence where they are on heavy psychedelics because that is the only thing that they find to help like actually anchor them into reality. Like it's the kind of inverse. But like mind you, they're still seeing like tracers and they're still undergoing this deeply LSD soaked experience, but they feel real and they can recall memories and they can recall themselves in a way that, you know, the body snatcher alien is trying to push out. And maybe like taking these psychedelia is like dampening the psychic hold or maybe the physiological hold that the alien has on the human's brain or something like that.
Yeah, so it's like almost the opposite of like dissociation, where it makes them connect more with their self. And like
Mhm.
for the psychedelic horror thing, I was definitely thinking that would be like the monster, the creature taking over, like picturing really bizarre imagery splashing in and like different hallucinations and stuff that could be very, very eerie. But it could be interesting too to like, yeah, what what steps would this person take to try to hold on to what little reality they have left?
Mhm. And then it also has to tie into like identity as well, where I'm just imagining like this mirror image of the person looking at who they are, but it's actually just a portrait of the alien that's taking them over, you
Mm.
know? And they're trying to like fight that image in some way as this thing's taking over. The other thing that might be kind of interesting to play with in this is, you know, if someone tells you that psychedelics are the only way that they can feel real or they can remember themselves, your friends and family might start to get concerned. And so there's like
Yeah.
even more like social stigma and like plausible deniability about like the kind of changes and stuff like that that you can that might cause like your friends and family to step in and be like, you got to go to rehab or you got to go to this reformer camp, and then like that's where the alien fully can take control and take hold.
Mm.
What is this thing's ultimate goal, though, besides just taking people's bodies?
I was wondering that too. Or like, how does it function? What does it do?
I mean, that's a great question. Those are both great questions. The easy answer is they want hive mind, they want, you know, like control of Earth's population. I would love
Mm.
to do something different than that though. Uh but I'm not smart enough for that. This is where I rely on you guys to be smarter than me.
Hmm.
Maybe what it's doing isn't necessarily nefarious. Maybe well, from its perspective, maybe they used to live on this planet and have dominion over it, and it's simply reverting time in a sense back to that state and bring
Uh,
its people back that way.
I see.
Which
So it's like it's some sort of like long quote unquote extinct creature that's been, you know, lurking in the ice or
Mhm.
some far underground or in the deep sea trenches or something, and this person somehow got exposed or let it loose.
Yeah, and like I could see you could then tie in the whole um kind of hippie notion of like, oh, I'm going to contact my reincarnated ancestors, blah blah blah, as part of the character's background, and that they're super into like past histories or maybe adjacent to alien astronaut sort of things, and it turns out that's actually what it is, you know.
Oh, yeah. I
Oh,
like
that's
that.
yeah, that's really cool. I also love the idea that this is like, you know, like you were saying, it's part of an Antarctic expedition or like maybe a deep sea. I think the deep sea thing is interesting because then you get a really claustrophobic experience as well, and one where again, you'd be put in a situation where I can't show people that I'm losing it because then I'm going to get kicked off, or like I literally can't get out of here. And so it only
Mhm.
makes it exacerbates the stress and terror that people are experiencing. You know, like I think that there might be something to that setting on top of it as well. But man, yeah, there's some really cool ideas floating around here. The idea of
Mhm.
reverting to a more primal state. I mean, if you want to take a look at it from like a conspiratorial like setting, that is literally what like the lizard people are supposed to be doing through climate change,
Yeah.
according to
Yeah.
conspiracy theorists, right? Like they're trying to reacclimatize the weather to make it so it's more, you know, habitable to them.
Right, and, like, I could see that working here too, like, maybe these things survived on, like, a more methane-oriented atmosphere or something, so now that methane bubbles are being released in Siberia or whatever, like, they're able to come back to some extent.
I'm so glad that we can bring the lizard people back into the forefront of conspiratorial thought.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
I think what's also potentially interesting here is that you are the monster, right? So we've approaching this as like the alien is the thing that's taking over, but maybe if you wanted to look at it more like man is the monster, humanity is the monster. Humanity is literally destroying the atmosphere and literally destroying the planet. And this alien is like, nah, maybe we can stop this, but the only way to do that is through direct control, assuming direct control, so to
mhm.
speak. And with that, I think that's a and with that, I think that's another good place to put a pin in it for now, and maybe we can kind of come back. But we've got one more. We've got one more time to spin around the block with a creature from beyond the stars. And let's add another companion this time. We're gonna kick out you for now. So we're gonna go back to just a creature from beyond the stars for this next scenario. But we're going to add in another monster, and that monster is going to be, well, that monster is some kind of building. So we've got some kind of building and a creature from beyond the stars. And when I say it's some kind of building, I don't just mean that it's the placeholder. I mean that the building itself is a character. Think
Mhm,
of Rose Red, think of the Haunting of Hill House. The building itself has a personality, has a history, has like a soul, an aura to it that itself is scary and terrifying. So, not necessarily just a haunted house. We can go multiple different directions with it. But what direction do we want to go in? That's what I want to know. All right. So, we've got a creature from beyond the stars and some kind of building. The subgenre, I think, should help guide us quite a bit. This time, we're going to be dealing with a subgenre of folk horror. So, folk horror has had a pretty interesting resurgence recently. And for those of you who might not be familiar with the subgenre, it's more akin to something like Wicker Man, where it often deals with rural themes. It might take place in suburbia or even beyond that, someplace more pastoral, usually dealing with themes of isolation, superstition. A lot of pagan stuff often happens in folk horror. You might also want to consider something like Midsommar as a folk horror movie. So, or I think it's called The Apostle. It was a Netflix horror movie that had to deal with. Uh, anyway, that's the type of horror that we should be looking into. So, Daniel, how would a creature from beyond the stars and some kind of building fit into a more folk horror movie?
Oh, okay. So
mhm,
maybe, I mean, I'm not thinking about the building yet, but maybe the alien is this thing that they're thinking is something native to their place that they're trying to appease. That could be one aspect of it, but we need a physical building. Um,
So, if we're doing it, I mean, if we're thinking about like folk horror, usually we're dealing with themes of like rural religion or superstition. So in my brain, the first thing that has like, like folk horror and also a building in this type of setting is either some kind of a church. But if we wanted to make it more American, I could also see us doing like a big tent style, like kind of like a revival style tent, or like maybe a series of tents, because I feel like that's a great way that you can kind of move from rural place to rural place with like an alien in tow, basically.
could we do something very uh sloppy Americana? So like not like Appalachian Mountain sort of thing, but I'm thinking like trailer park or the back lot of a Walmart in the
mhm.
middle of Florida. or I don't know, the remnants of a flea market. A flea market might be interesting. I'm thinking something very backwater, southern, and Coca-Cola-esque.
I do like the idea of like Walmart or something like that. Or like, I don't know, something.
Like a Costco. Costco's too upscale though.
I agree, Daniel. I
Yeah.
agree.
You know the vibe I'm going for, because like we're saying
Yeah.
folklore, right? The thought of folklore typically goes to the places we were discussing so far, which makes sense.
Well,
But we want to do something weird. I want to do something weirder, something that's like something that would be considered folklore 150 years from now. So like folklore
Yeah.
today, like for example, I had a professor when I was in on one of my seminar courses. It was a Star Trek seminar, because that's the state of liberal education in the South. But in that class, one of the theories was that the American mythology might be viewed as to contain Star Trek in some distant future, because it represents a lot of our ideals and aspirations for the future. So, and folklore in some ways talks about the beliefs of that local group. You know, it's a fragment of those beliefs. So I wonder then, if we think of today as having a folklore, what would that be? Something backwater, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
go ahead.
thinking like now, like a gas station, or like
Yes.
oil rig, or
Uh-huh.
coal
McDonald's.
mine, or McDonald's. Like something that's very core to American
Iconic and
life.
mundane, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I've got a couple of different options here that I'm
Uh-huh.
thinking about. So, one, nothing defines the American South quite like the Waffle House.
Yeah, or an IHOP.
Well, IHOP is northern, right?
Oh, it is? Okay.
I think so.
Yeah, so Waffle House for sure.
Yeah. So Waffle House, absolutely, right? Because then you can play with like really interesting colors, right? Like that big glowing yellow sign and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which by the way, deeply nostalgic for me as someone who spent some time in Florida growing up. But
I've never been to a Waffle House, actually.
It's
Never.
horrible.
There is nothing there for you, Courtney.
Oh, I know.
Right now. there is yeah. Anyway, so alternatively, right? Like the idea of like the Walmart being this kind of institution of American urban
Horror.
decay, but also like a place for horror, is really interesting, because what we could talk about and what we could be like kind of like play with is the idea that, you know, like the big super center comes in, runs all of the mom and pop, like the truly folk, you know, like places out of town. And then sometimes what happens, like in places like Western Virginia, or West Virginia rather, sorry, let me do that again. Like places in West Virginia, is that Walmart will just leave, and they will leave this giant decaying like super center. And guess what? All of those mom and pop shops are still out of business. So the idea that we can take a horror building and put it in a decaying ex Walmart, to me, is really potentially interesting, because then what you do is you fill it with all sorts of weird pagan, you know, mom and pop shop style nonsense and horror. And again, maybe this is where we throw in the thing from Beyond the Stars, but I love the way that you're thinking about this, Daniel, as like neo folk type of Americana. That is a really interesting way to look at this.
So maybe we just want to say Wally World.
I did also like the Waffle House in particular, though, because it got me thinking about like, I don't know, a group of like churchgoers going to this place, you know, every week after their mass or whatever they're worshiping.
And
Okay,
let's do that.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I mean, I don't know.
Waffle Land.
Okay, wait. Hold on. The idea that like if we shift the camera and the camera is following like the people who work at the Waffle House, and the horror comes from this congregation who come in every Sunday, and they like get progressively weirder and weirder. That to me, I think, has some really
Waitress as a protagonist, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like you have like the chef and the waitress and like all the
Mhm.
staff there, and then like you can either go kind of funny with it where all of the staff know how to kick the shit out of people because they're Waffle House employees,
Yes.
right? So like
Or
that can be like
they have to take it upon themselves to save the town, obviously.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But how
yeah.
is the Waffle House, how is Waffle Land an entity unto itself? Because that's the premise.
Well, Well,
Mm,
maybe what we do instead is we take the idea of the decaying empty Walmart and
Mhm.
have that like the Waffle House is like you're juxtaposing two American institutions. You have the Waffle House, which in this scenario is the core of the town, right? It's our POV, and then you have the decaying Walmart building, which is where these congregants are coming from. And so they're trying to get them to come to the ex Walmart as much as possible. Be like, you want to come and see our Messiah. You want to come and see our Savior. This will, you won't save the town, but this thing will. That kind of thing, where it's like, it's all sweet and honey until it's not. And then it's horror. And then, of course, you get the Waffle House fight,
I'm trying to square the idea of two buildings. I feel like
yeah,
they're crowding each other out almost.
yeah,
Well,
Um,
the Waffle House is just kind of like the incidental setup for the thing. The horror itself is coming from the building that is the ex Walmart, right? That at least that's how I'm squaring it in my head. Like we're getting the home base, right? So like rather than like, oh, I'm staying at home and like that's kind of where I'm safe, Waffle House to them is safe. And that's kind of where the home base is.
I'm just wondering if it's possible to have one building, but I don't know then what the antagonism is. Because I like the idea of this cult coming and encroaching upon their space and having their
yeah,
meeting there, and that's creepy. But then it's like, where is the party going? And obviously, the natural impulse is to make some other place, which could be that Walmart. But then it's like, does that diminish the premise of there being like one building that's frightening? But we've turned the Waffle Land into a good place, which for the horror it can't be, unless there's
What if
like,
it's
what's that?
oh, you can continue your thought
No,
there.
I was just saying, unless there's like some sub basement of it that we don't know about, or I don't know.
Oh god.
What were you gonna
Not
say?
not
Well,
a not the pizza parlor basement. No, what
Exactly.
I
oh
was
no, no,
what I was
Courtney, no. We already mentioned
Lit.
lizard people. We can't have pizza shops now, too.
I got adrenochrome down there. No, but what I was gonna say is like maybe it's one of those kind of multi-use building things where like it was a massive Walmart style thing with like a Waffle House embedded into it, kind of.
Oh,
Yeah. Ooh,
Or
that's good.
like you know how you have those
strip
like
mall.
Pizza Hut, Taco Bell things, like the
Yeah.
combo areas. So something like that where like the Waffle House is still going strong, but the Walmart is like in a severe state of disrepair or something, and maybe the
Right.
like
Like,
their sort of horror exploration once they venture out from the Waffle Houses into the decaying Walmart and the
So
horrors
make
that
it
it
like a
contains.
strip mall is what you're saying, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of those in the South where it's one big plot of land that has a bunch of stores attached to it, and I could
Yeah.
see like the main ones burned out and empty, and used to be occupied by some mega retailer.
Yeah. I think that would work.
yeah, or it's like it's kind of I love that idea, Courtney. Like absolutely love that. Or it's like it's also like up north, right? You also have Targets that have Starbucks in them,
Mhm.
right? Or
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
like a Stop and Shop that has a Dunkin's in it, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I see exactly what you're talking about here, Courtney. I see the vision of like this was once a Walmart that just so happened to have a functional Waffle House in it somehow,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
like a Waffle House
Attached to it.
adjacent,
Right.
type building. And then
Right.
so, again, we're thinking about this POV style. We're watching the congregants walk past that booth or walk past that restaurant every day. And then things get darker and weirder and more twisted. And then like maybe one day like somebody is like escaping from the back and then that's where the big kind of clash or where the tension point starts, something like that.
Yeah. One of the most dreary things I remember growing up in parts of Florida was there was like one region, and this is Frank Christina would remember this, but it was where her husband had set up a comic book shop briefly. And in that lot, it was such a desolate place. Like there was a police station attached to it. There was like a supermarket that was garbage that was falling apart.
Oh yeah.
But like, from the outside for someone who didn't live there, it would look like a really drab, horrible place to have to spend your time. And so I can picture, and then those sort of businesses that were there would literally decay. They'd run out of money. They would remain empty for a long time as nobody would pick up the lease. Then the place would become more and more unsafe. So I could see this happening. It's like a little strip mall in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And then you can have like that way you can have multiple kind of friendly characters come in as well, where it's the daughter of the owner of the laundromat or something like that, and they're just like right next door. Or and Daniel, I also so I'm thinking about this, like, because my uncle went to a church in a strip mall, and it's just as scuzzy and sleazy as you
No.
remember. Because I went with him one time, and I
Mhm.
remember it so vividly because it is like all fluorescent lighting, and it feels like the worst type of dentist or like doctor's office.
Yeah. It's just so
It
dismal. Like,
it's really depressing. Yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree with you there.
and it's all
But yeah,
concrete,
I love that idea. Yeah. Great job, y'all. Okay. I'm loving what we're doing here. And I would say that this is a great place for us to stop and consider what the alien is doing here. Because like is it as simple as the monster or the creature from beyond the stars is the thing that they're worshiping, kind of like folk horror style? It's not paganism, but like star paganism, basically.
Well, I guess one question is, does the alien have anything to do with the demise of business in this area?
I mean, I would say no, not initially anyway. Um,
Mm.
I don't know why, but I'm just like, oh, my brain was like, this is a sequel to our first prompt, by the way. Like, the one with like the slasher that has like the propagation. Like
Yeah.
this is the natural progression of that concept, except now it's moved to the south where no one's gonna notice all the weird shit that's going on.
I mean, another thing you could do is if you're looking to go back to your concept of competing, like something local that's being outshined by something alien, like literal alien to their local environment. You could, instead of the place having been run down, maybe the business is starting up again, and you end up having like a Walmart that's being opened that's extremely bright and extremely conspicuously inviting. And so
Mhm.
then it starts to bring in traffic, but they come to realize that the owners, who are this small religious family, are creepy and something is afoot.
Yeah. I like that. It could be like a kind of local department store had shut down and this
Mhm.
larger corporation bought up the land, and they're kind of constructing this thing around the existing like Waffle House type restaurant.
Oh, and it's all in the name of urban renewal or like
Mhm.
Yeah.
reviving the area or something like that. Like
And
th- this isn't just a spiritual revival. This is a community revival, like
Mhm.
that kind of thing.
Mm.
I could see, like, if depending on where you set this, it could be like a offshoot, LDS sort of cult, because there's a lot of them that are out of the norm. And that would capture a lot of the really small town vibes, but with a corporate bent, because they have that prosperity gospel sort of thing going on.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And then that naturally ties itself, because the LDS Church is more modern in its beliefs, could tie itself to something science fictional, behind it.
Oh, damn. The
Yeah.
LDS is kind of rife for like folk horror
Right.
inspired stuff because it's
Mhm.
all like that
The modern version.
veneer of like
Mhm.
perfect like life and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
then behind it, maybe there is that crack. And again, they do like, or oftentimes you'll see like trad wife shit, especially in the LDS, where it's like, come join our perfect life. Come join our perfect family. Don't you want to be perfect with us? and it's like that type of creepiness that you can totally like steep into.
And the employees are probably referred to as a family, which is usually how.
Oh God, yeah. Oh my,
so
that's perfect, Daniel.
You can even have like a character who worked at the Waffle House goes and applies there, maybe to figure out what's going on, and that's how you start tying them together.
Oh, this is definitely now giving me vibes of Sorry to Bother You, which is a very like surreal, strange movie.
I want to see that. I never saw that.
I think you'd probably like it.
I think you would like it too, Daniel. And now that I say that, I'm not going to spoil anything, but holy shit, that movie is really good.
Yes, it is.
I will say nothing more about that, but I can kind of see what you mean there, Courtney. I think I might disagree with some aspects of that, but I like the idea of like, like going on their side to be like, hey, let's go scope it out and investigate. And then you uncover something horse-like and terrifying,
Well, and on the subject of the alien, like, and folklore horror, which seems to talk about sacrifices to appease something that's unknown, like perhaps this family and the construction of this business all centers around doing something to appease whatever it is they worship that is the alien. But I don't know what the alien is or what it wants or why it's there. I mean, maybe we don't get to know. Maybe it's sort of Lovecraftian and unknowable, and maybe it doesn't even make itself present, and it's really about the people who commit the acts of horror, but then that doesn't really tell us. I mean, you'd have a situation where it's like talked about as being from beyond the stars, but the real horror is just the people making sacrifices of people and such.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely fuck with that. I mean, again, we're going with the building as the evil thing, right? So that totally makes sense. That tracks quite well, I think.
Put them in the cardboard crushing machine. If you ever had to work with those before, they're not.
Oh yeah.
Forklifts can be used. There's lots of appliances for murder in a Walmart.
I'm also just thinking like giant subterranean basement too.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that's also rife for horror.
A truck where the sacrifice takes place, like one of those semis, you don't know what's in there.
Oh, like the freezer truck things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's a lot here. There's a lot here that we can mess with. So yeah, I love all of this so very much. Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah, does Mormonism have anything to do with like other planets or?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you get your own planet once you die. Don't you know that?
Well, there we go. All right.
My understanding of it is that it has a more physical take on the celestial afterlife.
I see.
Other Judeo-Christian religions.
I see.
You get your own planet once you die, or maybe it's star. I can't remember exactly, but you get like you are rewarded with a physical celestial body upon your death. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe this Earth is like the reward for a very faithful Mormon alien that has passed on, and this is their planet now.
Wow.
I mean, alternatively, we could just go straight Scientology with it, right? Where it's just like you got the Xenu aspect to it. But I love the idea of like a blend between Scientology and LDS to make some kind of like weird, like neo-pagan sci-fi bullshit. You know what I mean?
A lot of it seems like it makes sense because a lot of the more contemporary, I'll say modern, but contemporary religions dovetail with science fiction because I think they have to reckon with the reality of the cosmos, whereas our ancient traditional religions were before our understanding of that. So they don't really have to care because they've already established themselves, whereas these have to make sense.
Oh man, now I'm just thinking, right? Like like if we're thinking about this scenario as like as a movie, I imagine that you go to the book bargain bin, which is like barely open, right? And like that's where you find this church's founder's old sci-fi books. That's where you start to gain like the knowledge to help try and fight this.
You realize, wait a minute, this person's name is the same as that, and the facts line up. Oh crap!
Yeah, I like that.
It's L. Ron Hubbard too.
I
don't mean David Miscavige, but still,
It has to be a fun RPG too to uncover the plot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's a lot to this. I mean, just the idea that you're playing like, hey, I am a Waffle House chef, and your fight is maxed out as a result of that.
Right.
Wait, Wait, that's a class, isn't it? Like if you're
Yeah,
playing
that was
Waffle
like
House Chef,
archetype.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, that's how the archetype would fit, 100%.
You can have
Mhm.
the so obviously there's a fighting chef, maybe the waitress who's just like, I don't know what she have, really high intimidation or something. I don't know, or
Yeah.
like high def or something. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
It's
Okay, I love all of this. I feel like now is the place to stop, and then next time we can pick this up and we can expand upon these ideas even further. What do you guys think?
That works for me.
Mhm.
All right. So that's going to do it for this episode of World Build with us. I hope you're enjoying your time in the spooky zone because I know I am for sure. Now, before we sign off, I always want to remind you that if you want us to build your world, we can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow some instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we can be building your world. If you want to follow us on social media, we are on YouTube and Twitter. Twitter is at Let's World Build. And if you're over there, give us a like and a follow and a thumbs up, subscribe, bell, etc., etc. You know what to do by now. If you want to come and talk to us more directly, guess what? We've got a Discord where you can chat with us practically one-on-one, kind of, not really. Or perhaps you just want to support us. You can go to our Patreon and give us money over there where you can get access to sweet, sweet patron-only goodies. Now, that's going to do it for this episode of World Build with us. Remember that we love you very much. We're going to get through this together until next week, where spooky season continues.